Yeah. Alrighty. So we're recording. Okay, so welcome to the first event of Rainbow Readers and Annie's Bookstop Worcester for Pride. I'm Sarah. I run Rainbow Readers. Felicia knows me. I have not met Sarah yet. My pronouns are she, her. So I suppose we'll start with you guys telling a little about your writing, and then we'll get into like just general chitter chatter questions and stuff like that. Do you want to go first, Felicia?
Sure. My name is Felicia Davin, and I write queer science fiction fantasy romance. Sorry, my cat is at my feet and she's causing me trouble now. My most recent book is Out of Nowhere, which came out in December, and it's romance that takes place in space. But I have also written a fantasy trilogy that is a polyamorous relationship with two women and a sort of gender fluid man together. And yeah, I'm excited to be here and chat about gays in space.
Awesome. How about you, Sarah?
I'm Sarah. I use they, them pronouns. I write more urban fantasy. I didn't think to bring a copy of my book out on the porch with me, but it's Power Surge, and it's young adult urban fantasy with demon hunters and a non-binary character. Most of my stories lately have had non-binary characters, although the one I'm working on now is probably the first one in a while that I've written with a female character. But yeah, that's when I'm not writing, I teach at a community college.
Oh, nice. I think you both do teaching, I think?
Yes. Yeah, I'm not teaching right now, but I will be teaching this fall.
And what do you teach?
I teach French.
Ah, and what do you teach, Sarah?
I teach like the English Comp 1 in developmental reading and writing classes.
Great.
Nice.
Hopefully I'll be teaching in the fall. I'm developing an online course this summer because we moved 80% of our classes online. But the particular one that I'm supposed to teach in the fall has never been taught online before. So
wow.
At least not the full thing. So it'll be an adventure.
Interesting transition for sure to going from being in the classroom to being online. Do you know if your classes are going to be taught in person or online, Felicia?
I don't know that yet. I think it's likely that it will either be that we have some hybrid form where there's some in-person stuff, but some students are not on campus, either because of international visa issues or because they are having, they have compromised immune systems, or there's a slight chance that we'll be all online. So they have not yet announced that.
Gotcha.
Moment of upheaval.
So what drew you both to writing queer speculative fiction? Like, I mean, I know what draws me to reading it, but like, what made you go, I want to write gays in space, or I want to write non-binary demon hunters?
Well, I always made up stories in my head. It was kind of like fan fiction that I never wrote down, and somehow eventually those characters evolved from being characters that existed to having nothing to do with the characters that inspired them, and just kind of became their own people. So that's kind of what got me started with writing. What made it queer was kind of figuring out my own identity. Like back when I was in high school, I was like part of the GSA, all my friends are queer, but I didn't quite know how I fit in that. Because it wasn't until I was about 28 or 29 that I first saw the term non-binary and realized, oh, that's what I am. And then started reading more about, I don't know, it just like figuring out that gender wasn't the binary I was taught it was, kind of opened up all kinds of doors and helped me figure out in what, like, okay, yes, I am queer. I haven't, I finally figured out how I fit in this community. And so that just channeled into my writing. And writing these characters helped me figure out my own identity. And then there's the whole part where I thought, well, maybe if I had read characters like this when I was younger, I might have figured out this whole thing a lot sooner and not spent most of my teens and 20s trying to figure out like what word, not knowing what words I could use to define or describe myself.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm kind of new to this area, and could you explain exactly non-binary?
So I'm not a woman, I'm not a man.
Okay,
It's
that's
a
what I
gender.
thought. Yeah.
Like something else, not necessarily between, but
Yep.
not one or the other.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds.
Sorry. My cat is right here. What drew me to writing queer science fiction and fantasy is that it's what I like to read. And I think there's something really exciting to me about when you write something that is set not in the here and now, but either in the future or in a completely different world or in a version of this world that has magic. Since you've already disrupted some of the rules, it's like permission to disrupt more of the rules. And so it's like, well, if magic is real, then why can't people be queer? Or yeah, if people are in space, traveling faster than light or teleporting or something, then why should I respect the laws of society if I'm not going to respect the laws of physics?
That is a good point. So it's easier to, once you've already broken some rules, to be like, well, I'm queer, I want this to be queer, or here's how I imagine what this magic system would be, and this demon hunter, or this angel, or space. Space is gay. Space is just automatically gay. What was the first book you saw in speculative fiction that had queer characters in it?
I think for me, it's probably Jacqueline Carey Cushiel's Dart, which came out in the early 2000s. And I read it when I was about 14. And the main character is bisexual. There's tons of other bisexual characters. And it just completely blew my mind as a 14-year-old. It's also very sexy. So I learned a lot.
Like it's just this big, giant book. But the audio for it is great. What about you, Sarah?
I'm trying to think of what would have been the first one that had a queer main character. I know as far as queer side characters, I remember like in Holly Black's Tithe, one of the side characters was gay, and then in Mortal Instruments, like Magnus Bane was my hero, even though I have kind of a love-hate relationship with that series. But as far as the main character goes, I'm not 100% sure. I would have to. You would think I would have an answer to this.
That's okay.
I've read, in the past couple of years, I've read a lot of queer books, but up until I started writing them, I feel like I really didn't see that many where the main character was gay. It was always some side character. And I can't remember which one was first. No.
That's fair. I can say the first like mainstream fantasy book that I remember reading that had queer characters in it was the Night Runner series by Lynn Fuelling. And that was, I think I found those about 6 years ago now, maybe 5. And that was like, because I went digging back into old fantasy and stuff to try and find those characters. You're both writers, but do you also read? Do you read more now that you're also writers, or how do you find a balance between being a reader and a writer?
It's really hard because when I actually read a lot more before I started writing, because when I get into my own writing my own stories, sometimes I don't want to leave the world that I'm creating to go and read someone else's. And then I'll, when I'm between projects, I'll read like 3 or 4 books in a week, and kind of like binge read and then go back to what I'm working on. I'm trying to find a better balance though, because I find that when I can manage to like, read and write at the same time, I pay more attention to things when I'm reading that can help me improve my own writing. But sometimes it's hard for me to switch like from one story that I'm reading to the one I'm creating. But I've been experimenting a lot with it this week, and I've actually read 2 contemporary YA novels. I just finished You Should See Me in a Crown, and then Felix Ever After, and I found that it's a little bit easier to switch back and forth if I'm reading a genre that's completely different from what I'm writing. So that might be a strategy going forward, is if I'm writing speculative fiction, maybe if I'm trying to read while I'm working on a book, read something that's either a completely different speculative genre or just contemporary, and then save the things that are more similar to what I'm writing for when I'm not working on for in between projects.
That makes sense. How about you, Felicia?
Yeah, well, like Sarah, I feel like it's a kind of a balance that I find every day, like how much time I'm going to spend writing versus reading. And it certainly is hard to switch back and forth between worlds. But I read a lot. And it's often something that I do when I'm not quite sure where I'm going in my own draft. So if I get stuck in writing, I often read something, and whether it's a completely different genre and setting from what I'm writing or whether it's kind of similar, sometimes just seeing how other writers resolve their plots and get to the end of their books makes me feel like, oh yeah, it is possible to do this.
Now I know, Felicia, you do your own audiobooks for your books. Do you want to talk about the experience of being your own narrator to your own work?
Sure, yeah. So I work with a local recording studio, and I have done the first 2 books of my fantasy trilogy. I was actually just starting to read the 3rd book in the studio when the pandemic hit and everything kind of shut down. So I haven't finished that one yet. But it's a really great experience, and it's there's a real kind of intimacy to it. Like, we're in the recording booth and it's just me and the sound engineer, and it's sort of like I'm reading the book out loud to him. And so I get to be in the room when he reacts to things. And so I get to see when he is surprised or concerned. And that's been really, really fun for me. It's been fun to work with him. And yeah, it has made me think a lot about, I read my books out loud to myself while I'm editing, just to make sure that they sound okay. And it's also a way to catch typos, other mistakes. But reading them out loud to another person, kind of trying to do voices and intonation, it's been, I've really learned a lot from it.
That's really cool. I love listening to Thorn Fruit on audio. It's fantastic. I haven't had a chance to listen to the second one yet. So it's fun. Like, does the sound booth guy like get invested in the story as you're reading? Like, because he has to pay attention to what's going on. It's like he's like, oh yeah, what's gonna happen next?
Yes, absolutely. And I don't want to spoil anything here, but it is a trilogy. So usually in a trilogy, the end of book 2, something bad happens. And he was really like, that's the end of the book? There's no more? And I was like, well, no, there's a 3rd book. And he was like, you're not going to wait a long time before you read me book 3, right? So he was very invested, which was really wonderful for me. And yeah, I would love to get back into the recording booth as soon as it's safe for both of us to do that.
That sounds like a really nice experience of a recording booth. Like, I just imagine him like, no, come back, give me more. What about you, Sarah? Does Nine Star have plans to put your books out on audio? Do you know?
They put some books on audio, but not everything. And as far as I know, there aren't any plans for mine to be recorded right now.
Okay.
Unfortunately. I would like it if they did, but it doesn't seem to be. What is my hair doing? Doesn't seem to be in like the cards for right now.
Gotcha. What is your favorite trope in speculative fiction to play with, like to write about?
This is such a hard question. I love so many different tropes.
I say pick your top 3 to play with.
I guess I had someone on Twitter once very lovingly roast me about my romances that I'm writing and saying, you know, that meme that's like, walks up to a straight couple, so which one of you is the something and which one of you is the other thing? They said that my books are, so which one of you has magic powers and which one of you is too earnest for their own good? And so I have realized, thanks to this person's really brilliant analysis of my work that I did not see until they told me, that I tend to write one person having magic powers, and possibly because of their magic or possibly for unconnected reasons, being kind of prickly, difficult, hard to get close to. And I tend to write the other person being very sincere and earnest. And yeah, so I guess it's a little bit of a play on
the sunshine and the grump.
Yes, the sunshine one, and yeah, the grumpy one is soft for the sunshine one, but with magic.
I have 2, as when I do put romances in, they tend to be friends to lovers. And that seems like it's the only type of romance I've managed to actually pull off. I'm attempting something different in my current work in progress though. And the other thing I like to have is boys as damsels in distress.
Yeah.
I think because there's been so many times as like a kid, like in the video games, it was always like the girl getting rescued. So I think I have 2 books with a non-binary main character rescuing a guy. So that I've noticed that's a recurring theme, and I started plotting out another story that was similar, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't have a third. We have to rescue the boy.
You can never have too many damsel in distress stories. That's my opinion. Of the books you've written, which is your favorite? Or if you can pick a favorite, what is at least your favorite scene that you've written?
I think my favorite is one I'm getting ready to query soon. It's the first middle grade book I finished. My working title is Junk Junction, and it was really fun writing a 12-year-old instead of a 17-year-old or instead of an adult. And you know, it's not published yet. I'm going to try to query agents before I consider, you know, self-publishing or an indie publisher, because I feel like with Kidlit, it's a better market if it's traditionally published, because then it can get into school libraries and everything. But that book was really, a lot of it was kind of inspired by some things from my childhood. So it really felt special in a way that some of my other books, I mean, I had a different favorite, but then I wrote this one and it was like, no, this is, and it's also like the 7th or 8th book I've completed. So I feel like my writing is just at a whole nother level now than it was before. So I think that one's definitely my favorite right now.
Junk Junction, I love that as a title. So
Great,
yeah.
Great title.
It's the name of an antique store in the book. My mom was an antique dealer, and I spent a lot of my childhood going to antique shops and flea markets and estate sales and everything.
So I bet you spent a lot of time at Brimfield.
I did not go to Brimfield with her. That was the one I always got out of. She went to Brimfield every year, but she would get up at 3 in the morning to leave for Brimfield. So my dad, if he had to work, would like take the day off so that I didn't have to get up at 3 in the morning to go to Brimfield. That is the one flea market that I've actually never been to.
Did you actually enjoy going to the flea markets with her?
I did. It was, I would make up these little stories as I would, follow her around through the antique stores and the flea markets. And like I had this game where if like you looked a mannequin in the eye, you had to go through this ritual to not turn into a mannequin. And that actually that was the inspiration for Junk Junction. So, and a lot of it takes place in an antique store, and the other parts of it, the kids are riding their bikes around Vermont. And then at one point they're in this old haunted house, and it's, just all these little pieces of, driving around, but little memories I have from driving around New England, going to all these stores, making up all these ghost stories while I'm walking around, looking at all these old things that, found their way into this book. So I'm really hoping that, this one works out.
It sounds like a really fun book.
It is.
Yeah, no, good luck with that. I hope that it gets published. So
thank you.
It does. It sounds great.
Thank you.
I think for me, when I think of my books, it's hard for me to separate the final product from the process of creating it. And for whatever reason, some books are much easier to write than others, and some books are much harder. So for me, one of the books that I remember as being kind of fun the whole time is Nightvine, which is book 2 in my fantasy trilogy. And I think that's because I had done a lot of the work of establishing the world in book 1. And then in book 2, you kind of get to play in the world. And it's also when the third member of the polyamorous triad shows up. And that character was just so much fun to write. And yeah, so just kind of the whole book, it's these 3 sort of disaster bisexuals flirting their way through situations where they really should be paying attention to what's happening and not flirting with each other. So yeah, that book was just really fun to write all the way through.
I'm looking forward to listening to that one on audio. My TBR is infinitely growing all the time, and it's like, calm down, I'll get to these books. Sarah, are your books more new adult or young adult, do you think?
I rate both. Like Power Surge feels more young adult, but it's some of the content's a little bit mature. It is dark, but I've read YA that's just as dark. I was a little bit conflicted about whether to move it up to new adult and have it be like first year college instead of, last year of high school, but I kept it high school. So Power Surge does have a very young adult feel. The sequel is set right after the main character graduates from high school, so it kind of crosses over into new adult a little bit. And the book I have, Earth Reclaimed, coming out in 2021, which is more, it's not contemporary, it's more high fantasy, kind of set in a magical future. That one's definitely YA.
Salita,
Yes.
the remaining time button popped up on my end.
Yeah, it's 10 minutes we have.
I thought this was an hour. I guess.
No, it's 40 minutes.
Okay. Alrighty then. That is my mistake. I thought it was an hour.
Sorry.
What, I know you both mentioned that you were readers. What would you like to see more of in queer speculative fiction?
I'm looking really for more like Ace and Demi characters. And I have noticed more of those starting to come out, because that's an identity that even after I realized I was non-binary, that I was starting to realize kind of fit me. And it was, again, something that I've experienced a lot for a long time, but just didn't know what it was. So I'm really into reading Ace or Ace Spectrum characters. And there's definitely some, but I'm still, they're still a little bit hard to find compared to like romance or lesbian stories or something.
What about you, Felicia?
I don't know that there's any specific thing that I am looking for more of. I feel like we're in this incredible moment where there's kind of more things coming out all the time. Like I have really enjoyed reading C.L. Polk's Witchmark and Storm Song. I just read Storm Song this week and thought that it was an incredible fantasy. So there's in a series, and it's set in a different world, but it's a little bit like Edwardian London, or not Edwardian maybe, but there's sort of World War I atmosphere. But there's magic, and Storm Song has this really beautifully written romance between two women, one of whom is a politician and the other one is a journalist. So they're kind of naturally at odds because the politician is trying to hide things and the journalist is trying to uncover things. So yeah, what I mostly want is more time to read. Because yeah, I think there's a lot of fantastic books out there that I just haven't had the chance to get to yet. And a thing I really appreciate about Twitter is that my Twitter is curated so that it's just book recommendations all day long, every day. And that's wonderful, but it's also, it makes me feel like, oh, I'm never going to get to these books.
Yeah.
So yeah, I need to learn how not to sleep, I think.
So where can people find you both online?
On Twitter, I'm at Shattered Smooth, and it's the same on Instagram. I also have a website, saracodair.com. I'm on Goodreads, Amazon, wherever you can download books or order print books, you can probably find some of my books.
And you could also get, I guess you can also get paperbacks of yours or hardcover?
Paperbacks, yeah. For Power Surge is a paperback, and the sequel for Power Surge comes out January 22nd. Not January, June.
June 22nd?
June 22nd.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah. And you can order any of these, any of the books from Annie's as well.
Yeah, yep.
And what about you, Felicia?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter as @Felicia Davin, and FeliciaDavin.com is my website. My Instagram is Felicia Davin Writes, although I'm not on Instagram very often. I'm on Twitter a lot, though. And yeah, my books are available. You can order print copies through Annie's or any other bookstore, and then they're also available in ebook versions online. So, and there's 2 of them in audio.
Awesome. Thank you both for joining us today.
Yes, thanks so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for hosting us. Yeah.
Appreciate it.
I apologize. I didn't realize that the meeting was only 40 minutes. I thought it was an hour.
Oh, that's okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. All of the Zoom meetings are actually only 40 minutes. Yeah.
Okay, that's good to know for the other 2 events.
Yeah. Sorry.
Is that a thing that Zoom does that you can only do?
Yep.
Yeah, I have a free account. You can only do 40 minutes.
Yep.
Like I have an account that I can do longer for, but it's like my school pays for it.
Oh,
so,
right.
It's like when I teach classes, like I don't usually go more than 40 minutes anyways with the class, but if I was using Zoom for a class, then, I could have a longer class, but